Welcome back. We are on chapter 4 of the Tuesday Cafe. My big night is finally here. The Tuesday Cafe awaits my arrival. Oh boy, I am thrilled about this. Mom makes it out like I'm going to be sitting at some outdoor bistro in Paris with all these writers I've never heard of, drinking cognac, whatever that is. I think it's a bit cold to be sitting outside, thank you very much. She said to me this morning, "Harper, I am so excited for you. I just know something good is going to come of this." "I'm excited too, Mom. As soon as you drop me off, I'm going to hop a bus to the Edmonton Center and check out the arcade." On our way downtown, Mom has me read the address to her about 1,000,000 times before we finally find the place. Before we find the place. She kept saying, "There are no cafes around here. There's no bistros or coffee shops around here." The address we were looking for is an old two-story building with one light on in an office upstairs, and another light by the front door. Mom pulled up to the curb and parked the car. Then she turned the engine off. "What are you doing?" I said. "I'm going up there with you. We have to register. Or we have to pay or something. Come on, get your mitts and get moving." "What if I don't want you to come up with me?" I said. "It's my writing class, isn't it? I should have some say in whether she comes up with me or not." She gave me one of those "get serious, Harper" looks and stepped out of the car. So much for the arcade. We went up the 2 flights of stairs, then turned the corner and saw a door with a piece of paper taped to it. On the paper were the words, in big, bold, black letters, "The Tuesday Cafe Writing Class. Come in." Mom smiled and gave me a little nudge. I thought to myself that if I ran now, I could probably catch a bus and be well on my way to Calgary before she got her shopping done, and be down in Montana or somewhere by the time Dad got home from his counselor's meeting. "Come on, Harper, knock on the door," she said. "It says come in." "Then go in," she said. I turned the doorknob and pushed open the door. The sound of shrill chimes rang out, making me wince. Why do people invite you into their office that have these chimes that can make a dog go deaf hooked up to the door? Why don't they just make you knock? We stood in the little lobby. There was a desk with a computer on it in front of us. To the right was a little boardroom. To the left was a room with a bunch of tables and chairs. There was carpeting everywhere, and all of these posters on the wall about reading and writing. There was nothing cafe-ish about the place, and I was about to make a suggestion to Mom that we'd been had when this young guy walks out from the other room. He seemed surprised to see us. "Oh, hi," he said. "Hello," said Mom. I got the feeling she still thought this place was going to be great for me, somehow. "I'm Judy Winslow. This is my son, Harper." We all shook hands. I managed a smile. He told us his name is Josh Simpson. He did not look like a writing teacher. He was tall and had big, wide shoulders and hands that could pick up a basketball. He had a brush cut. He looked like an athlete to me, maybe a swimmer or a high jumper. And Mom, who always gives people the once-over when she sees them for the first time, gave him about 3 once-overs, which means she had probably designed his entire wardrobe for the upcoming year, and at some point during my stay here would suggest something like an olive v-neck sweater and a simple white t-shirt to go with his blue jeans. He was about 30 years old, so she would undoubtedly recommend loafers over the running shoes he was wearing. I prefer the running shoes myself. He seemed nice enough, but he was obviously confused, and that made me wonder, what could be so confusing about this? He ran a writing course. Mom signed me up for his writing course. Mom and I showed up at his writing course on the night he told us to. What's the problem? "You're here for he said. He let us finish the sentence for him. "The writing course?" said Mom. "The Tuesday Cafe, I believe it's called." She said it like one of those, I'm going to use a different word here, French waiters you see on TV. "The Tuesday Cafe, monsieur? Ah, oui, an excellent choice. Très bon." "You are?" he said. He was very surprised. "Didn't you get my message?" said Mom. "I phoned here last Thursday, to be precise." Mom can be very precise. "Oh, okay," said Josh. No, I didn't get your message. The janitor here turns off the machine by accident sometimes when he's cleaning. He's very enthusiastic. But that's all right, so long as you know what we're about. You teach writing, isn't that correct? Said Mom. She is really one of the few people I know who uses the word correct in conversation. That's right, we teach writing. Well, we don't really teach it. I don't think you can do that. But this is where you come if you want to write. Mom looked relieved. For a second there, I think she was starting to have the same doubts I was. Harper here has to write an essay as part of his punishment for starting a fire at the high school in Elmville, she said. I looked at her and shook my head. The lady wears wigs. She is so worried about her own image, but with me, forget it. Everything is right out in the open, even with a complete stranger who is still looking at us like we'd gotten off at the wrong stop. Oh, really? Said Josh. He looked at me and smiled. His smile made me feel good for some reason. It wasn't a big, goofy grin or anything like that. It was a real smile. Sort of a caring smile, like the way Miss Davis always looks at me. Well, the furnace works just fine here, so leave your matches at home. That made me laugh a little bit. Mom didn't like it, though. It's very serious. He could have burned down the whole school. He has to perform 40 hours of community service work and write a 2,000-word essay on how he's going to turn his life around. Don't you, Harper? You can speak, you know. She gets like this when she's put off. She starts to pick at me, even though it's not really me she's mad at. She's mad at Josh because he didn't call me a bad boy for starting the fire. I was starting to like this guy myself. Okay, well, I hope we can help you out, but in the meantime, here it is, he said, waving his arm towards the rooms behind him. This is the Tuesday Cafe. There's coffee in the back room there, although I doubt you drink coffee. I think we should have some pop in the fridge. If not, somebody usually brings some. You can get some from them. I can give you pens and paper and everything. We meet in there. He points to the room with the tables and chairs. If you want to write your essay, you can. I don't think we've ever had anybody write an essay here before. But that's okay. There's always a first time. What do you usually write? Asked Mom. Her manner was noticeably cooler now. Stories, poems. We've done a play once, but it kind of fell apart. We have a little newspaper we do once a month. It's called the Popsicle Journal. You can write in that if you want. He said the last part looking at me. And what exactly is the Popsicle Journal about? Said Mom. Whatever they want it to be, said Josh. Last time it was about dogs. This time before that they wrote about movie stars. Or was it Star Trek? I can't remember. Mom started to look skeptical, like she was really starting to think twice about the place. But I was starting to warm up to it a bit, so I looked at my watch and said, Hey Mom, if you want to get all that shopping done before 9, you'd better leave now. She turned and gave me a look. This is a switch, she said. I gave her a smile. If I start writing now, I can get an extra 20 minutes in before the others arrive, I said. She looked like she could put cyanide in my soup and not lose a minute's sleep over it. Well, I do hope you plan on doing more with my son than writing about dogs in some journal, she said. Way to get on his good side, Mom. This is a writing class, not a daycare, Mrs. Winslow. Your son can write about whatever he wants, and he'll get all the assistance he needs. And if he doesn't like it, or you don't think it's enough, you can always go home, said Josh. My ears just about fell off my head. I looked at my mom. She looked like she'd just had a big bowl of cyanide soup. When was the last time someone talked like that to her? Try never, and you'd be in the ballpark. All right then, she said, putting on her gloves. It looked like her fingers were going to come through the other end as she was yanking them on so hard. Harper, you heard the man. This isn't a daycare. You're here to work. Let's see some results. Judge Tuckersbury is not a man to keep waiting. I'll meet you downstairs at 9 o'clock. And with that, she finally left. I turned to say something to Josh, but he was already in the other room moving some tables and chairs around. I went in and asked him if he needed a hand. He said no, so I went back and sat in the lobby. I felt comfortable already. I had a big smile on my face, thinking about the way he had talked to my mom. Then the phone rang. Josh told me to leave it. After the third ring, the answering machine kicked on. Hello and welcome to the Tuesday Cafe writing class. Our next session begins Tuesday, November 8th and will run from 7 o'clock to 9 p.m. for 10 weeks. Please leave your name and phone number if you would like to register. If you are calling for information, the Tuesday Cafe is a writing class geared towards adults with special needs, learning disabilities, or those wanting to improve their literacy skills. Should you have any questions, please call this number on Tuesday or Thursday afternoon and ask for Josh Simpson. Thank you for calling. Bye. The machine clicked and whirred and recorded a message from someone named Deborah, who said she'd be late for tonight's class. Now I know what my mother missed when Phyllis Carmyle walked in with her daughter's wedding dress, and why Josh was so surprised to see us. Suddenly, I was not feeling so comfortable. Chapter 5. The first person to arrive was a guy who seemed to be about 25 or so. He had dark brown hair cut too short on the side, and with a bit too much goop in it. It looked like his hair hadn't seen a comb or a brush in weeks. Like maybe he just ran his hand from one side of his head to the other. He wore thick glasses that had little pieces of surgical tape at the corners to hold the frames together, and his blue jeans had 4-inch cuffs. He was a little taller and heavier than me, but the parka he was wearing could have fit my dad, who is about twice the size of both of us. "Hey, Billy," said Josh, who came to greet the guy at the door. "How goes?" "I lost my mitt," said Billy. His voice was high and soft, like a little kid's. His glasses were fogging over from going from sorry. His glasses were fogging over from going from the cold outside to the heat inside, so he was looking around as best he could, trying to see where Josh was standing. "I only have one now." It was a purple mitt. His parka was an army green. The toque sticking out of his pocket was bright red. Mom would have had a heart attack. "Where'd you lose it?" said Josh. Billy's unprotected hand was almost white, it was so cold. He was shaking it in the air as if he wanted to get it off his arm, but he seemed even more concerned with his glasses. He took them off with his good hand and breathed on them to remove the fog, but his other hand was too cold to wipe them, so he rubbed them against the arm of his coat and put them back on. "There, that's better. I lost it on the bus," he said. "Just now?" said Josh. "How can your hand get so cold on a bus?" "No, not now," said Billy, shaking his head. He was very dramatic. He shook his head as if he wanted to get rid of that too. "Last year. I lost it last year coming home from the Space Sciences Center. We were playing football with it and someone threw it in this lady's bag and she walked off with it." "Why didn't you get it back?" said Josh. "What was I going to say?" said Billy. "Give me back my football? Forget it, it's hers. She can have it. It didn't work anyway. There was no thumb in it." "You had a mitt that didn't have a thumb on it?" said Josh. "My dog ripped it off. I used to hide my mitts in the fridge so my dog wouldn't rip them apart." "What do you do now?" said Josh. "He goes after my slippers now. I used to have 2 pairs of slippers. Now they're all little pieces. I don't wear slippers anymore. I just wear my socks." Josh stood shaking his head for a moment with a look on his face that seemed to say, "Only you could come up with a story like that, Billy." Then he said, "Well, come on in and take off your coat and warm up. Have a coffee. You're making me cold standing there." As Billy took off his parka, a woman walked in and gave him a shove from behind. She was very short, not even 5 feet tall, I would say, and she was stoutly built. Her hair was a large oval of tight little brown curls, and she had small, round-framed glasses. She looked at Josh and smiled, and held her index finger over her mouth the way you do when you want somebody to be quiet. "Who did that?" said Billy, turning around. "Patty." She laughed. "Got you again," she said. Then she punched him on the arm. "Ouch," said Billy. He was being dramatic again, but this time with a smile on his face. "I got you again, didn't I?" said Patty. She was excited. She was laughing and rocking from foot to foot. She couldn't stand still. "See if I take you to the movies again," said Billy. He was still rubbing his arm where she punched him. "You guys, this is Harper," said Josh. They looked at me but didn't say anything. Billy stopped rubbing his arm. Patty stopped smiling. "Harper, this is Billy and Patty." I nodded and said hi. "Who are you?" said Patty. Her face fell into a frown. "I'm here for the writing class," I said. She continued to look at me, reminding me of a teacher I had in grade 5. She's one of those no-nonsense teachers who used to make me spell 3 words at the front of the class every morning because my spelling, as she put it, was awful. I did not like that teacher. What for? Said Patty. What for? Because I want to improve my writing. I didn't think I had to tell her about the fire and everything. She wasn't really a teacher. She said nothing for a moment, but as we stood opposite each other, she did a quick scan of me, from head to toe, the way Mom does whenever she meets someone. Then she said, I don't like your shirt. My shirt? I said. What was so wrong with my shirt? It was a simple blue sweatshirt. My mom bought me this shirt. What's wrong with it? I don't like the color. Oh. I looked at the color. It was mid-blue, not dark navy, not dark blue or navy blue, but not baby blue either. It was my favorite color. I don't mind it, said Billy. He was nodding his head up and down. His forehead was burrowed, as if he had given the matter some serious thought, and had finally reached a conclusion. I like the color. It's better than green. I like green, said Patty, directing her eyes at Billy, but her glare was much less severe than when she looked at him. Green is too green, said Billy. Now he was wrinkling his nose and shaking his head from side to side. I don't know. I don't like it. Green reminds me of golf, and I don't like golf. I played it once and lost all my clubs. How did you do that? I said. I wasn't sure if it was my place to ask questions or not, and usually I'm pretty quiet in places like school and classrooms. But how someone could lose a set of golf clubs was something I had to know. I put 'em down to look for a ball I hit in the bush, and I forgot where I put 'em. I never found them again. Did you find the ball? I said. Oh, yeah. I always find lost golf balls. Even when I'm not looking for them, I find them. We stood silent for a moment after that. Then Josh, who had left to get spare notepads and pens from the supply room, returned and said, Okay, Patty, Billy, and Harper, why don't you go sit down? I thought that was a great idea. We all walked into the room with the tables and chairs. Billy went straight to a chair on the far side of the classroom by the window and sat down. I took a seat by the door. Patty, who took a minute to hang her coat, walked up to my desk a few moments later and stood beside me. Hi, I said, trying to be friendly. Maybe she was going to try again. You're in my seat, she said. I got up in about half a second and moved to another table. Then I looked back at her and said, Sorry about that. I didn't know. Now you do, she said, sitting down. Then she pulled a great, bright green scribbler from her book bag and a pointy, sharp pencil and a box of orange juice and looked at me again. I looked away, this time for good. A few minutes later, 2 more people arrived. I could hear them talking and laughing with Josh in the lobby. When they walked into the room we were in, Josh said, Harper, this is Lou and Dell. They are not a couple. They just walked in together. Purely coincidence. The woman, Dell, laughed. No, we're not a couple, she said. Then she added, What an unusual first name. Harper. What is that, Scottish? I shrugged my shoulders. I have no idea what kind of a name Harper is. Dell was a big woman, tall and heavy, with short, wavy brown hair and a pair of glasses hanging on a string around her neck. Even her hands were big, like my dad's hands. She reminded me of the woman at the courthouse for a minute, but her face, when she got up close, was very bright and friendly. I liked her voice, too. It was a high voice, but happy, not whining. Your mother's maiden name, right? She said. I nodded. I thought so. Well, hello. She came over and shook my hand. Her hand was warm and soft. She reminded me of the kind of mother you see on TV all the time, the kind all the kids go to when they have a problem. She looked to be about 50, so she probably was a mother. She said hi to the others, then took a seat at the front of the class. Lou didn't say anything to anyone. He walked over to a seat near Billy and sat down. I didn't mind for 1 second that he was sitting on the opposite side of the room from me. He was very scary looking. He had long, shaggy, gray hair that stuck out beneath an old, dirty green baseball cap. His face was hard and unsmiling. He stood about 6'3" and had a potbelly that was the size of Patty. His hands were rough and calloused. He was probably about Dell's age, or a little older. I laughed to myself when I thought of what Josh had said about the two of them not being a couple. I think I would have figured that out on my own. Dell chatted with Billy for a few minutes about the weather, and Lou got up to get himself a cup of coffee. He then asked if anyone else wanted one. His voice was surprisingly soft for such a big man, and when I looked at him to say no, he nodded and touched the peak of his cap. as if to say hello. Now I wasn't so sure he was hard and tough or not. He grimaced as he walked and rubbed the lower part of his back with one of his hands as he went through the door. About 5 minutes later, we were joined by two more women. One was thin and pale. She looked almost sick, in fact. She had black hair and dark, dark eyes. She smiled when she saw me. Her name was Susan. I smiled and told her my name was Harper. "Hi, Hooper," she said, and sat at the table a few over from mine and waved to Dell and said hi to Billy and Patty. "You got your hair done," she said to Patty. "I like it." I turned and looked at Patty. She was patting her hair and smiling. "I just got a permanent," she said. "Hey, I just thought of something," said Billy. "Why do they call it a permanent when you have to keep getting one all the time? That doesn't make any sense. You should be able to get one and wear it for the rest of your life." "Good question," said Dell. "I'm going to write that down," said Billy. "I'm going to figure that out one day." "I like it," said Susan again, still looking at Patty. The other woman sat in the chair right beside mine. She had short brown hair, thick glasses, and the wildest, loudest jacket in the world. It was made up of dozens of colors and patterns and shapes, all just thrown together. She was eating a rice cake. "I can't eat bread," she said after she saw me looking at the food in her hand. "I'll get a ratch." She dropped the book bag that hung from her shoulder to the floor and looked straight at me as if she was studying my face. "Mind if I look at you for a minute?" she said. I felt a little uncomfortable, but I didn't say anything. Something told me that even if I said, "Yes, I do mind if you look at me for a minute," she would look at me anyway. "What's a ratch?" I said, to change the subject. "She means a rash," said Josh, who saw her come in. "Deborah is allergic to flour. Aren't you, Deborah?" "Yes. Not all kinds, though. Not the kinds you smell. Hee hee. That's a joke. Here, you want one?" She dug into her bag and pulled out another rice cake and dropped it in front of me. "No, thank you," I said. "They're good. This one is cheddar cheese flavored. That's my favorite. I've liked them since I was little. Do you know how old I am?" She had a steady, even voice, like the voice you hear at department stores all the time, but already I could tell she liked to use it. "I'll have one," said Billy from across the room. "Not you, him," said Deborah, pointing to me. She just about poked me in the eye with her finger, she was sitting so close. "No, I don't," I said. "She's the same age as me," said Susan. She was smiling again and seemed excited to be telling somebody her age, but I still thought she looked sick, like maybe she had the flu or something. "Our birthdays are 2 days apart." She held up two fingers. Her hands were skinny, almost all knuckles and bones. 25? I said. I was really not into guessing people's ages, especially not tonight. "Wrong," said Deborah. "You're close," said Susan. "Go up two more." She held up her two fingers again. 27, I said, feeling grateful to Susan for giving me the hint. "Wrong," said Deborah. "Sorry, three more," said Susan, and she held up three fingers. 28, I said. "Right," said Deborah. "Here, have a rice cake." My prize. She pushed the rice cake towards me again. "Hey, you're younger than me," said Billy. "I'm 29. "I'm 27, said Patty. "No, thank you," I said to Deborah. "You're 29, said Susan to Billy. "I think I am," said Billy. "You like them more with peanut butter?" asked Deborah. "I didn't know you were 29, said Susan to Billy. "I have never had them with peanut butter," I said. "A rice cake with peanut butter?" "I'll eat it," said Billy, who had apparently thawed his frozen hand, for he wasn't waving or shaking or doing anything with it anymore, except holding his pen. "We'll call it my birthday cake." "Is today your birthday?" said Susan. She was suddenly very excited, like a little kid invited to a birthday party. "No, I just want some cake," said Billy. "What did you have for supper?" asked Deborah. "I didn't have supper. I was watching TV." "Can't you do both?" said Deborah. "No, my food gets too cold. I don't like eating unless it's a commercial or I'll miss the show." "Oh," said Deborah. She handed him the rice cake, and Billy started to eat it. I have no idea if she understood what he said. I know I didn't. Everyone started to do their own thing after that. Lou had returned with his coffee and settled into his chair. His back seemed to be feeling better. At least, he wasn't rubbing it anymore. Susan opened her notebook and put two pens neatly at the top of her desk. Patty slurped the rest of her juice out of her juice box and then tossed it from where she was sitting directly into the garbage can on the other side of the room. Nice shot, I said. 2 points, she said. No one else seemed to notice. Deborah pulled out a file out of her purse and began touching up her nails. I tried to take stock of where I was and how I was feeling, but I was interrupted. It was no big deal. I wasn't getting anywhere today. Here, your teacher said you wanted some pop. It was Dell. She put a coffee cup in front of me. Just hold the cup and I'll give you some. I took the cup. She filled it with Coke and told me to take a drink. I did. Then she poured more pop into the cup. That's what we used to do at the cafeteria at school, she said. You know those drink machines where you fill your own cup? We'd stand there and fill it and drink it and fill it and drink it. Then we'd get to the cashier and let out the loudest bunch of belches you've ever heard. They never charged us extra, though. I don't know why. Thanks, I said, hoping I wouldn't belch. Why don't you come up here and sit with me? This seat's usually taken, isn't it, Deborah? Who usually sits here? The tables in the room were all two-seaters. Deborah and I were the only two sitting beside each other. Ross, said Deborah. Ross, that's right. Which one's Ross? Said Dell. Deborah looked around the class, then back at Dell. He's not here tonight, she said. Oh, said Dell. I knew that. She looked at me and winked. Well, is he coming tonight? Probably. He's always late, said Deborah. I thought I was going to be late tonight, but I wasn't. Why don't you come up here and sit with me? Dell said again, looking at me. I didn't want to be thrown out of my chair again, and besides, Dell seemed like the one person I could relate to so far, so I said sure and grabbed my books and went and sat with her at the front of the class. She filled me in on everyone. Patty had Down syndrome. Deborah, Susan, and Billy were, to varying degrees, intellectually challenged. That is the term they use today, said Dell, so I've been told anyway. I'm going to use it. You don't want to insult anyone. That's for sure, I said, for lack of anything better. Lou, she added, calling him the shaggy one over there with the gray hair, dropped out of school in grade 4 and never went back. Grade 4? I said. Oh. I could not believe that anyone would drop out of school in grade 4. It was different in those days. All grades were in the same room. The teacher talked to everyone the same. If she didn't like you, she could make it awfully uncomfortable for you. Lou there didn't get along with too many people. I looked at him again. He was sitting in his chair, flipping through a magazine. It seemed like he was just glancing at the pictures. He was getting less and less intimidating every time I saw him. How about you? I said. I didn't go to high school, said Dell. I had too many more important things to do, like dating, work. This is the second year that we've all been together. We talk a little about what we're doing here and what we'd like to learn. Billy wants to be a movie star. He's a real movie buff. Patty wants to write songs. She loves to sing, that one. Anne Murray, Michelle Wright. Can she? Not at all. Couldn't carry a tune if you strapped it to her back. But she tries. It's adorable when you see it. What about the others? What are they here for? Deborah and Susan just want to write better. I'm not sure what Lou wants. He's a bit of a loner. He has a bad back, so he's not always here, you know. And you? I promised my kids I would get my high school diploma. How else am I supposed to keep them in school? So here I am, 53 years old. I have 5 kids, a job, a wonderful husband, and I'm learning how to write so I can get my grade 12. Kind of a funny way of doing things, isn't it? I guess so, I said. I didn't really know what else to say. No one had ever been so upfront and honest with me before. In my family, no one says anything. It's some group, let me tell you, she added. I can see that, I said. I didn't know what to think of it. At the moment, I think I could have tied all my mom's thread together in the world's biggest knot and dropped it on her for getting me into this. But then I would have to go back to court, and who knows what kind of an essay I'd have to write for doing something like that. Besides, nobody here was awful or anything, and I had all the Coke I could drink. Just then Josh walked to the front of the room and said hi to everybody. Then we went around and introduced ourselves. Everybody said who they were and what they had been up to. As I gathered from Dell, they all seemed to know each other, so I guess that the whole exercise was more for my benefit than anyone else's. When it got to my turn, I told them my name and that I was here to do some writing for an assignment I'd been given. I figured that was enough. Maybe I would tell them more later, but for now, they didn't have to know absolutely everything about me. I'm not my mother. What kind of assignment? Said Dell. Just an assignment, I said. Nothing special. I was hoping like crazy Josh wouldn't say anything. You mean like homework? Said Susan. Sort of, I said. Sort of like homework, eh? Said Dell. You could tell she was trying to figure this out. I guess I didn't get much for excitement around here. Well, if it's only sort of like homework, it's not for school. Now, who gives out homework that's not really homework? Oh, I know, the church. You have to do something for the church. What'd you do? Steal some wine? Is the bishop making you write something about theft and all that? Good for him, if he is. I think more young people should have to do that. It's not the church, I said, but I was starting to think that maybe I should leave. But of course, I had nowhere to go until 9 o'clock. Oh, it's not the church, said Dell. You stole some wine? Said Deborah, who had finished with the rice cakes. No, I didn't steal any wine, I said. You must have stole something, said Lou. I was surprised to hear him get into this. He had looked very bored when I was telling everyone who I was. You said you didn't steal any wine, but you didn't say you didn't steal anything, so you must have stole something. I think you're right, said Dell. I didn't steal anything, I said. I couldn't believe I was getting into this. I started a fire. Oh, a fire, said Dell. Her eyes lit up and got real big. Did you burn your house down? Asked Deborah. It wasn't in the house, I said. Was it in the church? She asked. It was at school, I said. I started a fire at my school. Good for you, said Lou. Did you burn it right down? Not quite, I said. I thought he was joking, but when I turned to look at him, he wasn't. I burned a school down to the ground when I was a kid, said Lou. Of course, it was easier in them days. It was just a one-room schoolhouse. Shame on you, said Dell, burning down a schoolhouse. There was no one inside, I hope. Nope, said Lou. They got out in time. You're joking, said Dell. About that last part I am, said Lou. Why'd you burn your school down? Asked Deborah. She was talking to me again. Because I didn't think anyone would care what I did, I said. Then I wish I hadn't said it. It was such a sucky thing to say, especially on the first day of class. Lucky for me, no one said anything. I doubt if they even knew what I meant. Then I looked over at Lou again, and he was staring at me, and he said, You too, eh? And that brings us to chapter 6 in the next part.